everybody. I am Jessica Koch, and I am your host of Profound Professionals. It is an interview series that has been coming to you for 9 years now. I am so proud and so grateful for all of you following us and sharing with us and learning from all the amazing experts. We have brought you over 1,000 industry experts from all over the world. They help you improve your personal life and grow your business. Today, I have an amazing guest. Today's guest is Steve, and Steve has been a practitioner for 3 decades, not showing it a bit in his smile lines at all there. And now he's an author, keynote speaker, and program facilitator for in leadership success engineering. So a program facilitator in leadership success engineering. Are you curious? Because I'm curious. We need to learn all about what exactly that is. So here we go. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jessica. Delighted to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. And clearly 1,000 previous guests almost. So wow, what a caliber of guests I'm sure you've had over those years.
It has been something else. It's almost been a doctorate soup, people with master's degrees and just people of knowledge from all corners of the world in all kinds of categories. There's so many things that can improve us and our personal lives as a person. And then there are so many experts and things that can help your business grow and create legacy and generational wealth for you, community, and family for hundreds of years to come. And so with that, we've had guests from all walks of life, from all over the world, all from, under this great big sun shining on us to make it all work. So yes, it has been, it's been something. We'll do some videos for our 10-year birthday coming up that we snippet just all the different categories and guests that we've had. It's been a wild ride. So,
wow.
So tell us how you began this journey and story, and a bit about this leadership success engineering, and what you're up to and what road led you there.
Yeah, happy to, Jessica. And you actually used the word practitioner to introduce me, actually, which is a word I'm very, very fond of, because I'll get to it momentarily, but I've been in leadership from a rookie leader, the first time you're given the title and a team to manage and lead, which was 3 decades ago now, and over 30 years of various sectors and various levels of seniority, ultimately at boardroom and executive level with teams in the UK here as well as internationally. Sort of my passion and my interest in the art and the science of leadership sort of has been developed over particularly the last decade, I would say so, because in the previous sort of 20 years, I was just too immersed in trying to do this leadership thing successfully. But I'm going to be very candid, over the 3 decades, I've succeeded, but I've failed just as many times. Sometimes we've won, sometimes we've lost. But actually, the cumulative effort over those 3 decades, and particularly over the last 7 or 8 years, led me to sort of follow this calling, or this sort of purpose that I found myself having in the latter stage of my corporate life of how can I help other leaders? How can I create almost a playbook, a template from what the most successful leaders that I've been privileged to talk to, work with, observe, even get the chance to talk and sort of ask them. And actually that's formed perhaps the last 6 or 7 years of my career, when my own business has started to take shape and grow, where I've been able to sort of write the books, do the research, stand on stages, and then ultimately deliver the programs where I've been able to share that sort of research and that insight that I alluded to as a practitioner. Because I really want to make a distinction here early on in the call, Jessica, is I believe there are lots and lots of gurus, for want of a better title. And maybe guru is the right word. I could never call myself a guru in the art of leadership, despite the experience, because I'd like to call myself a practitioner. And the difference between the two is I've been there and done it. I've got the scars, the bruises, the sort of the battle wounds, as well as the successes and the achievements and the highlights. And I certainly find that when I'm working with organizations, that it's that credibility, it's that experience that when you are speaking to leaders, no matter, leaders at the start of a journey, leaders in the middle, and leaders at the top end of the seniority ladder, when you're able to sort of relate to the challenges and experiences that they are facing, then I find that my material and sort of the insights that I've got to share resonate so much more. So that's a snapshot of 3 decades in corporate life, but with a real bias towards leadership. How do you do it? How do you do it well? How do you succeed? And ultimately, how do you and the teams that you lead sort of drive the sort of the success and the achievement that the organizations need? So did that make sense, Jessica?
It does. And what I'd love to hear from you now is, where are people in that leadership journey that come seeking you out? And how does the leadership success engineering kind of program incorporate in that? And let's talk about a little bit more about the clients who go, oh, you know what, I need that guy Steve in my life. And what exactly is pinching them that makes them begin to seek a Steve in their life, right?
Yeah, you're right. Of course, you're right. Well, if I answer the question, sort of last one first, and I'll
Yeah,
go
sure.
to the first one. I find, and I've certainly found this throughout my own career, but particularly since I've been sort of working on my own material, most organizations that are struggling, that have a performance issue, that are sort of grappling with why things aren't quite right at the moment, I tend to find that they start to focus more on the symptoms as opposed to the root cause. So they'll constantly look for that silver bullet of, once we find it and fix it, that's going to fix all of our organizational pressures, challenges, shortfalls. And organizations of all sizes will go running down rabbit holes looking for this sort of panacea, this magic solution that is going to fill and solve all of their organizational challenges. But what they constantly miss is, to me, is the root cause. They'll chase the symptoms, but the root cause is typically just the effectiveness of leadership right across that organization or that business. I've yet to come across a target, a metric, a KPI, an objective, and all of the sort of labels that we give to these things, Jessica, that cannot be associated or tracked back to the leader. Many organizations do not see what's right in front of them. Of, if you can tackle the root cause as opposed to the symptoms, then you can fix organizational pressures and shortfalls much more quickly, and much more in a systemized operational way than sort of chasing off the various sort of things. Well, it must be a marketing issue. Well, it must be a product or a pricing issue. Well, it must be a cultural issue. Well, it must be a competitive issue. It might well be some of those. But the thing that actually I find, and I keep coming, and an organization, when you present that to them, absolutely, it's almost eyes wide open of, why have we not thought of this, and why have we not invested and prioritized in our leaders? Because it's ultimately, you can have a good strategy and a bad strategy, but whether it's good or bad, it's the quality and effectiveness of the leadership in the organization that executes it. And that's been sort of where I've been getting organizations to sort of just open the blinkers a little bit and just look internally and just take that sort of exposure of, goodness, we've never thought of it that way. And when we've then begun to work with each other, we then start to see some fantastic sort of returns on that investment, and across multiple metrics over the years.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I'm pretty sure people don't walk in the door of, their doctor's office or your office for that matter and say, I think we've got a leadership problem. You know, that you don't walk into the doctor's office and go, you know, I think it's the gallbladder. You go, it hurts right here, and I don't know why it hurts right here. Or these are the list of my 5 symptoms that are driving me crazy and that drove me to make an appointment with you to see if, you know, I need my appendix out, my gallbladder looked at, or what's happening inside of me. And I think that's what you're doing with the business. They don't come in and say, hey, I think I got a leadership problem. They knock on your door because they have these other symptoms. And if we can help identify for our listeners some of the symptoms that someone will come in with, then we can help get excited those people who need to come find you, right? So maybe if their sales, the profit margin isn't there and the sales they're making and they're making sales, or maybe it's the communication between departments seems to be breaking down because from purchase to product or service performance to the client, something's breaking down, and the clients the clients we have are getting grumpy, or like whatever it is that's happening. There's some sort of symptom that doesn't sound anything like, gee, we might have a leadership problem here.
It's a great analogy that you use, Jessica, and actually the word diagnostic is something that I'm sort of, it's the primary stage of any interaction that I have, because organizations will reach out to me and say, we have a performance issue. And when I typically have the conversation of, okay, and why do you think that? They've immediately in their minds at CEO level or CPO level, C-level, executive level, will typically say, well, we believe it's this, or we think it's that. Can you come in and sort of fix that? And actually, it's a bit like, to use your analogy, going to the doctor and say, well, I've got a pain there, but I've been on Google and I think what I've got is this illness or this disease or this condition. And going back to my practitioner example again, the doctor will typically undertake a much broader diagnostic to actually say, no, the problem is here or is here. And one of the key fundamental stages that I do at the start of any interaction with an organization is run the diagnostics, because it's factual sort of evidence database that I can say with some confidence and some degree of sort of confidence again, to say that actually this is the issue. And these are why you're seeing accountability issues. This is why culturally there's a misalignment. This is why you're not able to execute your strategies, and so on through the diagnostic list. And when you provide observational insight as well as data-based insight as well as diagnostic insight, it almost then becomes a fait accompli for the organization, where they go, sorry, we weren't seeing all of that. That's exactly why we need your help. So I'm so pleased you reference back to that diagnostic stage, Jessica, because and actually when I talk about leadership engineering, you know, it's 7 fundamental themes. And one of them is the ability for the leader to undertake diagnostics before jumping to conclusion, because it's so easy for them to think, well, that must be the issue. I'll go and fix it.
And then you have to remember you're dealing with human beings, right? And the reason a lot of times that doesn't happen is because what CEO or CFO or anything following a C wants to say to you, Steve, we really got no idea what's going on here. So it's better for them, and from a human being ego standpoint, because we all have a bit of an ego, to say, you know, this is what we think it is, because otherwise we sound like, I don't know, we're all running around, nobody knows what the heck's going on in the company, you know.
I know.
So they have to come up with something. They feel, you know, it's you know, I love every lawyer out there watching and listening, but you know, you can't send a contract to an attorney and not have them have an opinion. You know, the contract could be near stellar perfect. They could have written it and forgot about writing it, and you send it to them. They're going to give you 2 to 3 things at least, if not 5 or 20, that need fixed on that agreement, because, you know, it's connected to their value. It's what they do. It's, you know, they'll critique it. And by the way, we're not giving you legal, financial, or medical advice in this episode, or any of our episodes. We are sharing with you our knowledge and fun and all the things we're up to. So simply, if you're listening, if you're a company or an organization and you're in leadership in this company and you're thinking, you know, we're not reaching fill in the blank, whatever goal, there's a really good chance having a conversation and an evaluation with Steve is a good next step. Now, do you work with companies that have, 5 leaders or more, 10 leaders or more? Like, what is there an ideal structure that seems to work best with the support you provide?
I work, Jessica, with organizations, what I would call in the UK anyway, medium to large size enterprises. And that's typically organizations of about 400 to 500 employees up to several thousand. And the reason why that's the sweet spot for me is that type of organization would typically tend to have 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of leadership. Because what it's very, very important that a sort of the reason that we deliver and that succeed the way we do is we don't just fix that leadership layer, because all that's doing is putting a band-aid or a sticky plaster over some of the problem. The leadership engineering theory and the frameworks to work, then ultimately it's embedding the operating system from the top to the bottom of the organization. So organizations with 2, 3, 4 and multiple layers of leadership, that's when you really see the magic happen. And the analogy I tend to use with organizations is whether you're an Apple user or an Android user, whatever phone you prefer, the operating system on that phone is very, very consistent. Yes, you can personalize with applications and widgets and all sorts of features, but 90% of what an iPhone or an Android phone does is pretty much governed by the engineering that's in that black box. And that's where organizations, when they can get an operating system, for want of a better expression, pretty consistent throughout the organization, then that's when you really do start to tackle the issues that they're facing. So sort of small to medium sized organizations of that size is when we can really leverage the ROI or the return on the effort and the investment, Jessica. And actually, that's when you do see the magic happen.
So 400 to 500 employees on average or more is a good. Is there a less than category that fits for a comfort zone as well? Because sometimes when a company gets to a certain size, they have an entire department that provides services like, for different things. Although I believe no matter what size a company is, a consultant and an outside view is valuable. But do you have a top end?
Yeah, and I'm actually working with 2 organizations now who are much smaller than that terms of reference, Jessica, as a software as here in Manchester in the UK. And I think they've got about 120, 130 employees. Also an insurance organization I'm working with in London in the UK, and they're about 200 colleagues. But actually, of those 200 colleagues, there's about 12 that I would call leadership. And actually, software business, there's about a similar number. And actually, that's still a good cohort that we can absolutely sort of support, develop, and apply the frameworks and the methodologies. So yes, my sweet spot is the bigger number, but actually I'm very, very sort of privileged and pleased to be seeing some real success with the smaller organizations I've just referenced as well.
Now, do you have a location throughout the country that you feel comfortable with, or?
Yes, we do cover all of the UK, and I'm very, very pleased to say that I've also spoken and consulted and done some work in the US as well over the last few years. So one of the things I'm particularly passionate about, and you and I spoke previously, is speaking about sort of the leadership insights and theories. And what tends to happen is when I sort of stand in front of an audience, whether it's passion or something else, but I'd like to think it's passion, then that usually invokes somebody, usually several people afterwards, saying, wow, that was really good. Can you do something that sort of builds on that? And I've been very, very privileged. I've worked with organizations in Chicago, in New York, in San Francisco. So I'm not suggesting it's on my doorstep, Jessica, and I can nip to San Francisco tomorrow, but I would like to sort of stress that, leadership, wherever you are in the world, is effectively still the same set of challenges and issues. And therefore, I think the insights and the models and the frameworks are hugely transferable as well.
Well, and I think that people from the UK and different parts of the world, as well as people from the United States, benefit greatly when they bring in outside culture views and countries and perspectives of how corporations and how things run differently, because sometimes that bit of difference can be added, that spice can be added to their own recipe and really be a huge game changer, because how things are done throughout the cultures and the different locations is quite impressively different, not in a way that there isn't, in a beneficial way, I think, really begin to think outside of the box and think differently, because if we all just get together for everything that we already know, then we're really not adding anything new to the pot, so to speak. So having those new ingredients and
by the way, it works in two ways, because as much as I can bring that perspective sort of transatlantic, what I've also realized from having the privilege and the honor of working with those organizations as well is I also bring back perspectives that perhaps I wasn't sort of sensing and developing and picking up with my UK clients as well. So I want to be very, very sort of transparent that as much as I enjoy sharing the perspectives that you've alluded to, I also get back on the aeroplane and a little bit wiser and a little bit more rounded as a result of that experience, which again goes back to my expression of a practitioner earlier on.
Yeah, and an airplane nowadays is so not always a necessary constant. Like there are certain things and certain times that consultants can take that time and expense to in person see and work with teams and clients, and that's all fine and good. But so much of it can be connected and related and carry through virtually, so and quite successfully. So we've seen that change in the last few years globally, where people are accepting that and stepping into that in a bigger way. Before we move on to get an amazing tip from you, one of the other things I wanted to talk about is industries. You talked about a tech company. Are there specific industries that you really have more advanced knowledge, or you've just done a lot more work with, or a lot more references with, or you'd like to continue to grow in that area? I realize your topic kind of covers any of these organizations, kind of no matter what they do behind the scenes, it has a flow, but sometimes there are some specific industries you've had some great success with for this.
Yeah, I have, and if I'm being very sort of thinking back and reflective now over my career, whilst I have worked in several sectors before I actually sort of took the leap to work sort of on my own sort of businesses, etc., I have a strong bias towards banking, towards financial services, towards SaaS software organizations. If I was to chunk up my sort of corporate life into those sort of 3-4 distinct sort of areas of expertise, not necessarily expertise, experience, leading teams and observing leadership in some of those sectors that I've just alluded to. So yeah, they are the ones closest to sort of to my heart, because leading an insurance organization, leading a software business, then they have been the ones that I've truly enjoyed the most and probably have the most sort of insight.
And some of those categories have really combined themselves. I mean, now there's entire banking platforms that actually have no physical banks to them whatsoever. They're technology and app-based 100%. And so that's a fascinating combination for you. Have you done any work with credit unions, just out of my own personal curiosity?
Yes,
they're a little bit special of a unique banking structure and system. So.
Absolutely. Yes, I have. There's a very successful one in Manchester in the United Kingdom that they asked me to do some work with their new leadership, some new emerging leaders in their organization. And, we won't go into detail, but
sure, of course.
That's more a non-profit type organization where, that was more pro bono, because I sort of have
it's kind of a not-for-profit, but there still is profit involved somehow, that's done correctly and appropriately in this very unique sort of style.
Exactly.
I will give you a couple of suggestions prior to us moving along based on that information. So, and there's national associations throughout the United States, and you want to lean in towards more United States-based clients, you want to look for these national associations, because a lot of them will allow you as a collaborator to come in and do virtual webinars and trainings, come and speak at their annual conference. And so there are definitely national associations of credit unions and banking organizations and tech companies and tech councils. And looking at those organizations that serve those industries across the board, and you want to look for ones that serve the leadership, right? Because there's the National Association for everything, and sometimes even specific leadership in that association. So National Association of, CFO and finance directors for credit unions throughout the country, or CFOs for tech companies throughout the country, and or CMOs or COOs or whatever. And looking for those and reaching out to them to do and offer both a virtual webinar as a part of the membership package of value that the member gets when they join their association. And then finding out if it makes sense for, a live a live spot at one of their annual conferences. That's a bit of an investment and a leap for you across the pond as it is. But still, the virtual would probably go a very long way to support you. Yeah, so that's definitely something that you want to look at, is those annual conferences, national associations, and working within their within the even virtual opportunity, providing webinars and trainings for their organization as a member benefit. And then they see and find you whenever a new member joins. They go to their membership library. Say that 10 times fast. And then they find you there, and then suddenly there you are. And so it's a evergreen kind of a way to edify your knowledge and the value you bring. So
that's a great shout.
And then also reaching out in your LinkedIn community for people, and looking for groups in those categories again, but reaching out to say, I'd love introductions to, I have a letter of, getting old school letters of reference in the kind of work you're trying to do with corporations of the size we're talking about, old school on a letterhead PDF format. And asking for those again. People forget to ask for them, and you can have an organization and you can say, hey, I've done this work for this credit union here. I would love to offer some support for the credit unions with you. Here's my letter of reference for you to review. It's a very powerful and still very meaningful in the kind of industry that you're working with.
That's great counsel, Jessica. Thank you.
Well, these are all things that I've done in my sales and marketing career, and spoke to these national conferences, done the webinars, provided the letter of references. So this is all a bit of how I had success. So now we're going to have you share with all the leaders out there listening a tip, something they can do today with their team or for themselves as a leader that would make a real difference.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna use the C word, the communication word,
It's big.
sort of tip here, because whatever role we have at leadership level, like I say, the most senior level to the most sort of junior level, the ability to communicate and to sort of persuade and influence our colleagues and our teams is hugely powerful. And one of the most powerful sort of tips that I could give is, too many leaders, and I can see this in life, let alone in business, too many leaders think that communication just involves the what. This is what we're doing. This is what is changing. And if I could give one tip, it's those leaders that can actually overlay that with a layer of why and a layer of how. That's when the sort of dots get joined up, Jessica. That's when teams can get aligned behind a communication or a purpose or a mission or an objective, whatever label we want to give it. But very few leaders actually take the time to think and plan and articulate, right, I'm very clear on the what I'm going to communicate, but how am I going to describe the why? How am I going to sort of touch hearts and minds? And then when I've achieved that, how am I going to give some confidence in the how?
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to do it. If you can sort of land on those three elements when you're communicating anything to a team, then you really can achieve some fantastic outcomes and results, because you're not leaving the audience wondering, well, I understand the what and the why, but he or she didn't mention how, or she mentioned the how and the what, but nobody said why. And I know that sounds very, very basic, but actually it's incredibly powerful. And it's one of the skills and it's one of the attributes of the sort of leadership sort of engineering frameworks that we've learned over the years, that those leaders that tend to succeed and achieve most of the time have a real aptitude or a skill at this. It's not necessarily inherent, but it's something that you can practice. It's something that you can practice again. It's something that you can practice again. So if I was to give one tip, it would be to think about communication, and when you execute it, don't forget the why and don't forget the how.
When I was in grammar school, we learned it as the 5 W's, even though they don't all start with W. What, why, where, and how, right? The how's got the W at the end, at the tail.
It's so fundamentally basic, and it's incredibly foundational. But in the pace and the pressure of leading teams, it's often forgotten about. And there's so many ways we communicate with our teams and our organizations today, usually electronically. Now, gone are the days of sort of conference calls. Do you remember those from 2000? But actually, it was then that I started to sense and see that there was a pattern emerging. And people have forgotten over the last decade, particularly leadership, that the why and the how are just as important as delivering the what. And actually, anybody that can keep anchoring back to that has got a pretty powerful framework that will get most communications landed.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you keep your 5 W's in everything you do, it should be in your mission, it should be in your vision, it should be in your social media, it should be in your email message, it should be, I learned that you structure a sentence with all of those components and a paragraph and a story. Like everything, foundation starts with those 5 W's. And so what a great reminder of that. I love that. How about a nonprofit cause you care about? We've been sharing these for awareness and for hugs and shout outs of virtual love from across the globe to learn and hear about different causes, and just hopefully inspire someone to give time, treasure, or talent to a cause that they care about. So how about yours?
So pleased you asked me about this. Yes, because aside from the sort of professional and the business side of things, if there's another passion that I have in my life, it is education and helping those students in education. Particularly, I have a particular affinity for those boys and girls who are in the final stages of formal education before they go on to college or university. And I work with 2 or 3 schools. I'm on a local governing body, and I'm also give advisory sort of time and expertise to various headmasters and head teachers. And I love the opportunity, Jessica, of sitting with these boys and girls. They're typically age 16, 17, maybe sometimes 18. And I work with them on their presentation skills, how they articulate their views, how they articulate their opinions. And that's been something I've done for several years. And it's 2 or 3 organizations that actually facilitate it. Again, not for profit in any capacity, but it's something I feel I can give back, and it's something I get real value in return from. And the amount of cards and the amount of sort of messages and emails over the years from people who've gone on and achieved great things and actually have said, it was your session, or it was your sessions that lit the fire. And actually I can get quite emotional when I think about it now. So that to me is something very close to my heart.
And that's awesome, because someone listening out there could be inspired to give their skill sets to an organization near them, or just, again, remember that they have a cause that's already close to their heart. They just haven't, life gets busy, and you forget to pause and say, what do you need? How can I help? Time, treasure, or talent. So hopefully we inspired someone to do something good today. And thank you for sharing that, Steve. Yeah, I've done some I do a lot of social sales and marketing consulting and social media training in my company, and I've done some LinkedIn classes for high school students, getting themselves prepared to make connections and really leverage it as they go through their college career and their education, building up those connections. And one of the students we helped, because we looked so specifically for things, was able to find, her parents were in the police force, and there was a specific scholarship connected to children and she ended up in our work on her LinkedIn landing a scholarship for the police force, for a student who was a child of someone in the police force. So
isn't that fantastic?
yeah, so there's just so many cool things that we can do with the knowledge that we have to help others. So, you know,
and at that age, Jessica, we help them lay the foundations, and we help them build a confidence layer of, actually, this is important how I portray myself on LinkedIn. This is important how I portray myself in college and university, etc., etc. So you know, the fact that you're able to share examples like that just gives me even more impetus to keep doing this.
Yeah. And, you know, I always think, I've listened to some success stories, and I heard one that stuck with me, and I wish I could tell you who it was, but it wasn't about who it was as much as about how we really need to begin right away with all the things, like how this success story said when she was very young, someone she loved, a godfather or an uncle or someone very close to her family, gave her the Think and Grow Rich book. And she began that, you know, as a teenager. I'm thinking, if I had found that book, I'm 52 and fabulous, I had found that book as a teenager, like, or so many of these other books now. You never know what's going to land with a teenager and what they're going to pick up and what they're not. But if they're not exposed to it, and someone doesn't say, hey, at least check this out, then what? Then, you know, you could have been that early starter of their success. Now they can choose to just throw it under their bed or in the closet and ignore that book from Uncle John or whoever gave it to them. But they could also dog ear it, love it till it fall apart, and read it and be inspired by it. We just don't know. And so, you know, taking these actions and supporting the youth and the leadership of the future is important.
The book that you talk about is well thumbed and is on my bookshelf here, because again, yes, I was very lucky 20 years ago that a mentor of mine shared it with me. That's the first time I'd come across it. But it's sort of, the universe has mysterious ways, and occasionally it just falls off the bookshelf as I'm looking for something else, and I think, oh, I need to read a chapter of that again. So you're right, if you can put these things within sort of reach of these people, then you know, things will happen for them.
Well, and I do believe that when, you know, that whole saying of when a student is ready, the teacher will show up, or same with the book. I think books are very much like that, which leads us right into our book conversation. But before we go there, I want to talk about the Think and Grow Rich, since we started that just by accident. 100 years ago, a gentleman called Charles Haanel wrote the Master Key System. And that book 100 years ago, and that program, was actually what inspired Think and Grow Rich. And there's a letter from Napoleon Hill to Charles Haanel saying, it was your program, your everything, that got all of his things going. And he gives him credit for that. They have that documented. And there's 3 gentlemen that came together with brilliant backgrounds, and what a beautiful contribution, and where they took the Master Key System and revived it, you know, from being 100 years old. And it's called Tapping the Source. So if you're looking for another book that blows your socks off in the way that Think and Grow Rich does, Tapping the Source is the modern, more updated version from 100 years ago of the original honor and tribute to Charles Haanel, who wrote the Master Key System, which inspired, like I said, the Think and Grow Rich. So
Getting just a lot about how many other ideas for Christmas presents. I think you may have just given me another one for the listener.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I've listened to the audio, so it's my husband's, and we went and found a hardback book of it, and so it's just been really, it's really wonderful. So books that inspired your personal life or helped you grow your business.
Well, yes, I've been very fortunate to write 2 books, and I've read countless others. I'm just on the 3rd manuscript now. So, but the one book, I think, if you're asking me to sort of recommend what's inspired me, it's a book that many people watching us or listening to us will have heard. It's the book on mindset by Carol Dweck.
I don't know that one, actually.
Oh,
and I know a lot of books.
It's just over my shoulder there next to the 2 books that I've written. But it's a book where Carol's a professor, I think, at Harvard University. And she sort of over the last sort of 10, 20 years has sort of come up with the research that we have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And it's one or the other. And the difference between the two and how they get us to think and operate and live, probably alluding to some of the principles, for example, from Think Rich and sort of Napoleon Hill's book, is just the power of the mind is incredible. And that's the book that's probably most well thumbed in my sort of bookshelves.
Oh, I'm excited. That's the first time I've ever heard that one even shared in all of the authors. So
I think probably because I operate in the leadership field and talk a lot with it, and then it's quite common, people have heard it, but actually I assumed that it's been a New York Times bestseller, so you'll be able to get a copy of it very, very quickly, Jessica, but it's incredibly short, concise read. It doesn't take you weeks, but it really does make you think about, thinking. It really does make you think about, actually, am I a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Because the difference between the two is incredible.
I love that. I love that. And in your field of leadership, the other books that always pull at my heartstrings are The 1 Minute Manager and Systemology. Have you read Systemology? Fantastic book, Systemology. And Fix This Next. That's a fantastic one. And that one I read by happenstance, by universe, in my belief. I read Systemology and Fix This Next together, and the authors are completely different from different sides of the world, and they went together like peanut butter and jelly. It's like what Systemology was missing, Fix This Next had, and vice versa. They just went together in such a brilliant way. So yeah, really good, really good. And you would also like Grow. If you haven't heard Grow by Jim Stangl, who was past global marketing executive of Procter & Gamble. I've actually talked to Jim Stangl, called his office and had a chat and told him what a fan of his book I was. And so was lucky enough to have a conversation.
Santa Claus, Jessica, thank you.
Well, I love this stuff. So anything else about your business or programs that you want to cover or touch on? Best place for them to find you?
Everything. Anybody can contact me. My sort of website is very easy. It's my name. So it's stevemcnicholas.com, and everything, how to book calls with me, how to understand the programs, how to talk to me about speaking, etc. Anything and everything is available at stevemcnicholas.com. So if there's one sort of plug or reference, Jessica, then I would ask people to use the website. I'm obviously on LinkedIn as well and do a lot on there. I try and post every day. And several clients have reached out to me through LinkedIn over the last couple of years as well. So they are the 2 main sort of ways of anybody interested in learning a little bit more can talk to me about.
I love that. All right, you out there, if you're thinking, wait, I've got a book, I've got a program, I have a way to help someone live their best life ever and inspire the world for years to come, or I can help them grow their business so that it is a financial passive revenue machine, blessing their community and their future generations. for years and years to come. Much like those masterminds and millionaires, we know that their family is enjoying 150 to 200 years of generational wealth from years before. If you can help someone achieve all of these different amazing things, then you should jump on our show. Reach out to us and our team, and we'll talk about how to feature you. And before we go and say goodbye, I would love a final thought from you, Steve. What do you got for us?
Well, if I can, clearly what's come across hopefully in our conversation, Jessica, and thank you so much for your sort of perspectives and recommendations, particularly on reading, is I am passionate about leadership. And I've come across and worked with and observed and coached and occasionally sort of encouraged and cajoled leaders at all levels of organizations and multiple sectors. And if there's one bit of wisdom or insight I'd like to share, is people need to realize that leadership is a privilege. Often we feel the pressure, the challenge, we lie awake at night worrying about things that we as leaders feel accountable and responsible for. But actually what I've come to realize, particularly myself over the last several years or so, it's ultimately a privilege. If an organization has given you the badge and the belief and the confidence to say, we want you to lead people, then I want leaders at any level watching this today to actually understand that the opportunity they've got to change lives, to impact sort of way, way beyond their own role is massive. And never ever forget that. It's ultimately a privilege to do what, and we should always look at it that way. But I understand that we have difficult days as well.
Yeah, we definitely. I love, so many people say you get a new start, you get a fresh start every day. Well, truthfully, take a deep breath and just hold on, because in a few seconds you get a chance in one more minute. You get a new chance every minute to make a new choice, make a new decision, take some action. Pull yourself together, take a deep breath, and right behind that minute is another minute, and they just keep coming. We don't know for how long, and we want to make sure the minutes that we are having today can really make an impact later. But we do have to take care of ourselves, and we do have to do all the things, right? So this has been a great show, Steve. I've loved having you. It's been an awesome chat on leadership. Reach out to Steve and get things diagnosed and see where you can't improve things and scale, get past that hump and reach that goal that you've been striving for, that you've just been missing the mark. It'll help you figure out why and take the action steps with clarity to achieve it. So thank you again, Steve, for being on the show.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you for the invite. Enjoyed it.
All right, everybody. I'm your host, Jessica Couch. This has been another Profound Professionals. And until the next one, be kind to yourself out there and be kind to each other. Bye, everybody. Good.